Alright people, we're back with VHS Crazy. This time it is the Barry Levinson joint Wag the Dog. Let's get right into it. Over the next months and possibly years, I'm going to record 27 consecutive reviews on 27 separate VHS tapes. God help me. Here we go, full speed.
Put a little weekend in your week. Rent a video.
Wag the Dog. For some reason, I have 2 copies of this on VHS. I'm not sure why I don't have 2 copies of any other movie on VHS. I guess this is just the sort of movie that was very popular on VHS because it wasn't very popular in theaters. And I have no idea why. This is one of the funniest movies of the 90s. I wouldn't say one of the funniest movies of all time, but definitely one of the funniest movies, and definitely one of the funniest political movies. Like, everyone talks about Dr. Strangelove, Dr. Strangelove, Dr. Strangelove. I argue that Dr. Strangelove is Kubrick's worst film, and only just because Peter Sellers isn't that funny. This is way funnier than Dr. Strangelove. And it's a really good example of a great political comedy. So if you haven't seen this, definitely get your hands on it. You might be saying, I treated Mr. Levinson very harshly in my review of the Robin Williams film Toys. And I did, and I stand by what I said in that. However, I also mentioned in that review that Barry Levinson has been behind some really good movies, like Rain Man, or Sphere, or this, and Toys just happens to be a weird little anomaly in the guy's filmography. This is absolutely Barry Levinson at his highest point, and I don't know why this isn't as fondly remembered as Rain Man, because it's honestly really good. And Dustin Hoffman brings the bacon in this. Like, it's so good. It's got 2 of the biggest names of all time, Robert De Niro and Dustin Hoffman. Why don't more people talk about this flippin' movie?
Oh, fuck my life, I want the credit.
Now, I've looked at the Wikipedia page, and as it turns out, a lot of people do mention this movie, but it's always in reference to the Clinton administration and the Lewinsky scandal. You know, I don't think that that's a case of wagging the dog, or they say Clinton invented something to wag the dog away from the Lewinsky scandal. I honestly just think it's a coincidence. I just think this is a really funny movie with an original premise, and so help it came out a few months before the Lewinsky scandal broke. But I think George W. Bush has to be the king of dog wagging, or maybe it's Dick Cheney, the malevolent little vice president behind the scenes, not really Clinton. I mean, you're caught with the Lewinsky scandal dominating every headline and TV screen for weeks and months, and how are you gonna wag the dog away from that? I don't think Clinton was able to. I think that's gonna haunt him for the rest of his life. Here's an actual theory. What if the Lewinsky scandal was just a wag the dog away from Bill Clinton's association with weirdo Jeffrey Epstein? What about that, huh? Maybe the Lewinsky scandal was just a staged, Bill Clinton's hanging around with Jeffrey Epstein, but here's a Monica Lewinsky to keep you distracted, because honestly, I just don't think, having sex with someone who's not your wife is that big a deal as hanging around with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, I'm not going to go into that. I don't think Bill Clinton was that great a president, if I'm being honest. There's nothing memorable about his term. He didn't really do anything. And, I will say that he is probably the worst Democratic president. I can't say that about, Obama, Biden, or JFK. They're all swell guys. But then you got Clinton, jeez. He's just kind of dumb, I mean, I don't think he was malevolent or anything like George W., but I think he was just really stupid and didn't know how to get his act together, and makes the entire Democratic Party looked bad by association. But I mean, heck, that was the age of flippin' John Kerry. So, there were a lot of, unappealing Democrats back then who just were too middle of the road and just not appealing enough. And that's how George Bush hung on for 8 years. Nobody wanted to vote for John Kerry. The guy was just a nut house. Wag the Dog is really a fun, gosh darn movie. There's a lot of fun sequences in this. I like when they replace the chip bag with the infant.
Let's keep working, people. Are we getting there?
This movie feels really modern, and I know I say that about all the movies on this series, but this one feels like, man, this could just be about the Trump administration, right? Like, nothing changes, This is a very relevant film, because it deals with things like scandals and, juicy Hollywood and Washington gossip that's really never going to go away. I also like the dichotomy between Washington and Hollywood. Both of them are very, scandalous cities with lots of things to hide, lots of sordid secrets, as it were. And I think that's a very interesting dichotomy that this movie draws.
Look at that. That is a complete fucking fraud, and it looks 100% real.
In fact, this version comes with a little featurette called Includes Featurette from Washington to Hollywood and Back, containing interviews with Tom Brokaw, Barry Levinson, John Frankenheimer, and others. On the front here you have the really cool image of a film reel with the United States seal on the front of it. I just think that's such a clever little image. The United States seal represents Conrad Brean, and the film reel represents Stanley Motss, partners in crime, working to paint the president in a good light and make it look like he's doing great things. I think the Albania bit is really funny. I think the shoes are just a laugh riot. This movie has so much going for it, and there's so many moments that you'll just look at and you'll be like, holy shit, this movie went there. Now, of course, like many movies set in Washington, D.C., this movie takes place in a fictional universe where the president isn't Bill Clinton, and, because you don't want to accuse the real president of anything, so you make up a fake president. And I think, for one, this actually works in this movie. Like, you actually think, yeah, this wouldn't really work with any other president. So, you gotta make up a fake president to fit the outrageous acts that are going on.
The war of the future is nuclear terrorism. It is, and it'll be against a small group of dissidents who, unbeknownst perhaps to their own governments, have blah, 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 blah.
But at the same time, this movie does feel very relevant and close to home, and it still achieves its goal of saying the American public is pretty gullible. That's not a message I agree with to, the absolute extent. I think a lot of American people are really just concerned about things that don't matter, and I think a lot of American people are too worried that their politicians are trying to trick them. But this is an interesting movie in that it shows exactly how, if a politician were to be dishonest, they would go about doing it. And the end result is the purest kind of comedy, where the audience and the two main characters, or three main characters, are totally privy to what's going on, while everyone else is oblivious to it. It's a very classic comedic strategy, and it really pays off here because Barry Levinson really knows how to pull it off. Of course, you have Kirsten Dunst in here. And Kirsten Dunst is one of those actresses I feel is kind of underrated as far as everything goes, especially now you got actresses like Scarlett Johansson and whatnot. But Kirsten Dunst is a pretty good actress. Most of you will know her, of course, from Spider-Man, the original, the good one with Tobey Maguire.
I would like to point out that I am under medical care and taking medication, the side effects of which have rendered me a little...
Quite touching.
The bit in the airplane is really funny. And this movie just picks up when Woody Harrelson gets on. He's only in it for like the last little bit, but Woody Harrelson's in this, and he plays... You see his face and you're like, oh my god, is that Woody Harrelson? And then you realize Yes, it is. Yes, it's Woody Harrelson.
Get me back tomorrow, because, tomorrow they're having beans.
And he is absolutely hilarious in this, even though he only has like a few lines. It's great. Woody Harrelson absolutely turns. You watch this movie and you're like, okay, this is really funny, and then Woody Harrelson starts talking, and you're like, oh my god, this is so funny. Oh my gosh, this is so fucking funny. That's just the kind of, Woody Harrelson used to actually be like really funny in movies like Kingpin and stuff, and now he's just in Zombieland. Like, what a downward spiral that is. Like, just he does more in this, in his like 10 minutes he's in this, than in both Zombieland movies. Who thinks Zombieland is good anymore, by the way? Like, I know the sequel was hated generally, but who thought the first one was good? Because I watched it, all of it, and it was definitely the worst film in Woody Harrelson's career. I think, it's just America's response to Shaun of the Dead. You see how popular Shaun of the Dead is. They're like, oh, we can do that. We're gonna make our own funny zombie movie. And it just doesn't work. It's so cringe. Anyway, Woody Harrelson's in this. He's great, and it's just really funny. I like the idea of the Albanians. That's really clever, because oftentimes you just got the most random people being projected as the enemy, whether it's Ukraine or Canadians or the Mexicans, or it's a different country every week that everyone says they're gonna go after. And it's like I said, it's a movie that really feels like it could just be now, I guess. It's a very topical type movie, and it doesn't get old because nothing in it is explicitly 90s. Even the part where they have the movie magic set and they replace the bag of Tostitos with a baby, I mean, that's pretty much just a standard special effect today. And obviously it was new when this came out, but they don't treat it like it's new or anything. So you also have the We Are the World parody, which, those aren't such a big thing anymore, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a new one sometime for something. And, you'll get it. I mean, it's not that out of date. Robert De Niro is really good in this. He has a beard. He's rocking some facial hair in this one. I just find it wild how much De Niro can shift. Like Dustin Hoffman, he's always pretty much the same. But I mean, man, Robert De Niro's characters are always just so different. This is Travis Bickle and Max Cady and George Burns. I mean, my gosh, the guy can really do it all. But yeah, this is just some good stuff. And I would definitely recommend this. If you like De Niro in Meet the Parents, he's also very funny in this. Check it out. Some good stuff. I don't know, this movie doesn't have more attention, or why it's not talked about much. I mean, this is a funny political movie. I'd argue it's better than Dr. Strangelove. I honestly would. This is better than Dr. Strangelove. I'm gonna come right out and say it. Gosh dang, is this movie underrated? Watch it, check it out, and you'll be blown away by just how much you feel like you're not watching a movie from the 90s. You'll just be like, yeah, this just feels like the Trump administration. Crazy stuff. What I find even more wild about this movie is that you can really see the directorial style of Barry Levinson from Toys impacting how Wag the Dog looks and feels. I mean, when you get right down to it, a director's style is consistent throughout their filmography for the most part. And you can tell, oh, this shot is a Kubrick shot, or this shot is a, Levinson shot. And some parts of this movie, like the giant row of TVs, just feel pulled straight out of the flippin' Zevo toy factory from Toys.
Are we ready yet?
How soon do you think we'll be able to get this cut?
Oh, we're gonna be done in about 4 to 5 hours.
But this movie is a lot more biting and funny than Toys, and it shouldn't be underrated, because this is actually a movie set in the real world, unlike Toys, which is set in a craptastic LSD fever dream. This is a movie that actually is interesting, and I would 100% recommend checking this out, because I think Barry Levinson is one of those directors who had one big hit, Rain Man, and then he just kind of falls into obscurity. In fact, I don't even hear Sphere talked about that much. And Sphere is some good shit. Unfortunately, it's not going to be on an episode of VHS Crazy, but I do have it on VHS, and the first time I watched it, I was taken away. And it just goes to show the guy has range. You know, he can go from like a really funny political satire like this to like this cosmic horror like Sphere. It's just, I just find that crazy. And I don't know why Barry Levinson isn't talked about as much as any other director. Quentin Tarantino is talked about more than Barry Levinson. Why is that? That guy doesn't have a lick of style to him. Why is everyone talking about flipping Christopher Nolan? All he does is make everything look sad and bleak and put in there, you know, that's all he does. Even his early movies like Memento, you're just like boring, fucking lame. But you look at a Barry Levinson movie and you're like, yeah, this has style behind it. The guy has a vision.
Tracy, one more time, Tracy. You're doing fine.
So I just don't know why Barry Levinson isn't talked about much. I think that's kind of sad, you know. So if the only movie you've seen of his is Rain Man, check this one out. Give it a watch, because it's really a gosh darn good movie. And here on the front you got Robert De Niro and Dustin Hoffman giving each other a nice little toast. Isn't that heartwarming? Because I mean, they're both just tremendous actors, and whenever they're together in a movie, I mean, my gosh, sparks will fly. You don't get Dustin Hoffman and Robert De Niro in the same movie and it's gonna be a bad movie. I mean, my gosh, am I right? One very interesting tidbit before I give my final rating on the movie is that some of the music in this is from Huey Lewis. I think some of the political marches are from Huey Lewis, and it doesn't even sound like Huey Lewis. I mean, it kind of does. It has that, you know, kind of updated nostalgic tinge in there, but I just find that really funny and crazy that Huey Lewis made some of the songs for this. Anyway, that's my review of Wag the Dog, and gosh golly gee whiz, what am I gonna rate Wag the Dog? That's right, baby, 5 stars for Wag the Dog. I would feel dishonest giving Wag the Dog anything else, because it's just such a good movie. The news clips are so convincing. The fake political ads are so convincing. They feel like they're pulled straight off a real TV. This movie is a convincing movie with a convincing atmosphere and some crazy relevant messages about the American political system. And I would recommend it if you're into funny political movies. It's not even that political. It doesn't say whether this fictional president they're working for is a Democrat or a Republican. So, you know, heck, this could be the one movie that both parties can equally enjoy, I guess. But, you know, I just see it as like a damn funny movie. This is some good shit right here. And I don't think it's about Bill Clinton. Just look at it on its own. It really stands on its own. It's Wag the Dog by Barry Levinson. What a flippin' romp. Anyway, that's my review of Wag the Dog by Barry Levinson. If you'd like to support these reviews, then go ahead and write to Nicholas Aceda, 1424 Columbine Street, number 1, Denver, Colorado 80206. I got some fresh content on the way, and I'm going to be working harder than ever now that VHS Crazy is back from its month-long break. That's right. New VHS reviews every 3 or 4 days, so I could really use your support. Send in for some Nicholas comics. You won't be disappointed. You're in for a real treat. If you're into political satire, I personally recommend College Buddies. But anywho, I'll see you next time on VHS Crazy. Sayonara, suckers.